He played 9 seasons in the majors, 6 in Philadelphia, also played for the Rangers and Cubs, graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. And you can hear him with Hall of Fame writer Jason Stark on their podcast together. It's called Starkville. He's also calling the MLB playoffs for ESPN. Doug Glanville is with us. What's up, Doug? How are you?
Pat, I'm doing great. Enjoying the run, getting excited about the playoffs.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. We're all ready for playoff baseball to begin. It's been so long for us here in Philadelphia. We don't know how to act anymore. We used to do this every year, and now it's been over a decade since we've had playoff baseball. But it starts Friday against the Cardinals, Phillies Cardinals in St. Louis, 3-game series. Um, you know, it took a long time to get back. It probably shouldn't have taken this long. Yet to get back, it took another wild card team being added. Do you think that I don't want to say does it cheapen it at all, but I don't know. Does it kind of take away from it a little bit?
No, not at all. I mean, I think the system's constantly evolving, and we got a taste of the shortened season in 2020, and there was more teams. So you had even the Astros that year, and the Brewers were under 500 when they made the postseason, and they were like, "Hey, we win, whatever." And the Astros went pretty far; they lost in the ALCS. So I think once you're in, you know that that's just the way the rules were set up, and I think
Sure.
it's still a great accomplishment for the Phillies.
The one of the main reasons why things turned around here, or seemingly, you can point to Joe Girardi being let go, Rob Thompson taking over as the Phillies interim manager. He brought a calmness to this team that maybe wasn't there before. The guys seemed to love playing for him. What do you know about Rob, and why do you think this has worked so well?
Yeah, I mean, I had a chance to do games earlier in the year with the Phillies Brewers when Joe Girardi was there, and I certainly have known Joe for a long time. And then later, when Rob took over, and there's a familiarity. He's been experienced his years with the Yankees, and also just being under Girardi, just kind of working through knowing the staff, knowing the team, and knowing what adjustments to make. And I think he's been a beneficiary to a certain degree of young guys coming up and producing very well. It's a very sometimes unusual. We have this core of young players come, and then they also come and become so productive that they bring an energy, but yet a calm of being able to excel during what is a playoff chase. And you have to give Rob Thompson some credit about how he was able to bring everybody together and know when to give guys a day off. Talking to him at one point, he said, look, I try to let them know when they're playing, and I make sure they don't feel like it's contingent on how they played the day before. So they don't feel like, oh, I went 0 for 5 and I'm sitting. Here's your schedule. So there's a lot of advanced notice, and certainly right away when he took over, the Phillies went on a great run. I mean, he knows their defense was a weak spot, but he's also figured out more about where to place everybody to try to compensate for that. And then when you get the bats going, you have an explosive offense.
On the field, who do you think right now is the most important player for the Phillies heading into this series against the Cardinals? Number of great veteran bats. The two co-aces, Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, will play a huge role. But who do you think right now maybe is the most important player that really needs to step up in this series?
It's hard not to mention Bryce Harper in that answer because, you talk about two-time MVP, someone who has the ability to just change the series by himself. So if he's on offensively and, they get the other pieces going like Schwarber and Castellanos, big signings effectively in the last few years, that's what that's what they're made of. That was the reason they made the signings they did, to get these big bats, heart of the order, to put up crooked numbers and just outslug the other team. So, when they play that game, they have a good enough pitching to win. And nothing's more comfortable for a pitcher to have 8 runs in the first inning, with the capability that the offense has.
It's a quick series, yeah. Like you said, anything is obviously possible. They're clearly the underdog, as they just kind of slid into the third wild card in the National League. But if they are to win this series, if they are to beat the Cardinals and move on, how do you think that will go? What do you think has to happen for them to move on?
Well, I mean, they have to play their game, and I think they know what their game is. I mean, it has a lot to do with their offense. And we know offense can be fickle and inconsistent. which is why they have to do some of the little things too. Bryce Harper running with his hair is on fire. Whether he's circling the bases or going first to third, they have to keep up the pressure offensively, and that's where the young guys come in because they can do that. They have the pressure packed ability to go first to third. They can, be aggressive, maybe steal a base here and there. I think when you diversify your offense that way, then you can lean into the fact that, you get runners on base, you can put up, more than solo home runs. And when you have that with some pitching, whether guys that, can come in off the pen or whether it's in the rotation, Nola, for example, just primetime performer, just ice water in his veins. And that rotation, at its best, they can go up against anybody. And we saw that when Nola pitched against the Astros, when it came down to prime time. So the Cardinals, they're a good team. I've seen them a few times this year. Pujols' resurgence. Their offense, when the beginning of the year was just Arenado and Goldschmidt. That was it. And there was concerns they weren't deep enough. But then all of a sudden they gained some depth, and whether Nootbaar or Pujols finding it again, that made them a more complete team. But there is that tendency that if you make the right pitches to the right guys, you can still reduce the Cardinals back to a team that's Arenado Goldschmidt. And if they can do that, then I think they'll have a huge advantage.
Baseball is definitely the sport. I think I actually learned this in working with Jason Stark and reading his stuff over the years. Is like every day in baseball you see something that you've never seen before. Yeah. I feel like over the last month or two of the season, we had just never seen anyone do what Albert Pujols was doing. It was sort of mind-blowing how he was able to flip the switch and do what he did in the second half. From your perspective, former player, now covering the majors, just how cool was that to watch?
It was great to watch. Just keep in mind, I played against Albert Pujols, so that's how long he's been in the league. And actually, when I was like, he was a rookie and like halfway through my career. So this guy's played a long time. And I think it's cool to see because you get these flashes of someone that was this great player. And it's hard to do that because it doesn't always end that way. As your career, you get older, you don't have flashes that last more than a game. Usually it's like, okay, I got a couple hits that day, but that's it. He's had, a second half that made him really one of the best hitters against left-handers in particular and middle of the order type guys. And it's fun. It's fun for the game. I called the All-Star game this year and the Home Run Derby and to watch the respect. And to me, for Albert Pujols, he's a guy that was very serious. He always, and I got to know him a little bit. I went to one of his charity events. But for the most part, they called him the machine. And to see him have a lot of joy this year, smiling and playing around. I called the game where he pitched, which was out of control. And so I think it's great for the game because, it gives you a perspective on what it could be when you do ride off into the sunset and how the legacy players are treated. Those are good messages for young guys to preserve the game. So I think it's been a fun ride for everybody.
Looking at the rest of the MLB postseason, you've got the Dodgers, who just look like a juggernaut, 111 wins. You got the Astros in the American League, but still then you've got the Yankees, who are a really great team. You could pick a number of different teams to make it to the World Series, but how do you think this whole thing plays out?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, if I go off of my sort of, I guess, my ESPN projections back in like February, if I try to stick to it, I think I picked Dodgers, Blue Jays. That was my pick, so I figured I might as well stay with it since that's what I said. And they're still around. But what's fun, I think the National League, there's just a lot of great teams because I've seen most of those teams pretty often, and really all of them quite a bit. And there's different moments where like that's the best team in baseball. No, that's the best team in baseball. I mean, I've seen the Braves. I saw the Braves, beat up on the Mets. I've seen the Mets be at their best. I've seen the Cardinals beat the Braves a couple games in a row where you're like, that's a really good team. And, of course, the Dodgers. So that's what's fun about it. They all can, whether they get hot at the right time or lean into their strengths, they all have potential to be a team that could go to the World Series and even win it. And so that makes for a great postseason. And on the American League, I don't think you have quite the depth in that way, but you have like teams that I'll be doing the game. You have Cleveland and Tampa. You have teams that are, scrappy. They're not the home run hitting teams. They pitch, they play defense, they run bases, they go first to third. So you get a little bit of that kind of old school flavor. But then you have the sluggers, teams like, the Yankees and the Astros that can beat you a lot of ways offensively. So I see it as a lot of fun. I mean, the Astros are going to be tough to beat. So, if I definitely saw the Blue Jays being a premier team. They were good, but they weren't as good as the Astros this year, nor the Yankees. Right. And I don't know who's going to knock the Astros off. The Yankees, it might be their nemesis again. I'll tell you. Man, that team is good.
Before we get to a quick special segment, can you tell us a little bit about what you and Jason Stark are doing these days together?
So much fun. We've had, now it's, I guess, let's see, started in 2019. Started a podcast called Starkville, a combination of our names. And, I grew up a Phillies fan. I went to college in Philadelphia, so I used to read his columns at the Inquirer when I was in college. So when I met him as a player, I was like, no, I'm a fan of yours, actually. So we became good friends, and we ended up working at the same places multiple times. And at one point, we came up with a podcast idea. And it was one of the funner pitches we had to pitch the show. We had no script. We had nothing. And, the team at The Athletic were like, well, what are you going to do? We don't have any information. I was like, well, we'll just we'll do something we normally do. So we kind of imitated or mocked one of our typical phone calls. And we had the whole crew laughing, and because it was just our random tidbits of information, just like you said, like things that never happened before. So the show's been going really well. We started off as like more of a pure trivia show, and then it morphed into having interviews. With the pandemic, we brought in guests every week, and we just stuck with that format. So we got great guests, and we still have our trivia, and we tell a lot of great stories, and really it's just kind of two friends just having fun. So show's done well, and we look forward to just doing more episodes. Playoffs will be crazy, but we're gonna still try to pull it off.
Very cool. And like you grew up a Phillies fan. I grew up here in Philadelphia, read Jason, and actually did get a chance to work with him at a radio station here in Philadelphia, hosted a show with him. And I can tell you firsthand, as you know, just one of the best of all time. Check it out, Starkville with Doug Glanville and Jason Stark. So before I let you go, I want to do a quick, a fun little thing called A Gallon of Questions. That's the name of this podcast. And so I throw some random questions into a gallon can of paint, and we pick them out, and we see what we get out of it. Should we try?
Sure.
And we'll give it a shot. Here we go. Doug Glanville, A Gallon of Questions. The first question is, one thing you wish you would have done differently during your MLB career. What's one thing you wish you would have done differently during your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing I would do differently. Well, I don't know. My last year, and there's probably a lot of ideas, but my last year, I signed with the Yankees and tried to be kind of Yankees or bust in spring training. Didn't really work out. It's probably a little risky to kind of go for that in my final year, but I'm like, well, I want to try to go where I can win. Probably was better to go to like Tampa that year with Lou Piniella and then get traded at the trade deadline. Probably would have been a more career extending decision. Because I ended up retiring after that. But I'd probably say that.
Interesting answer. Okay. Favorite athlete growing up?
Oh wow! I loved all these sports, but I was a big Phillies fan, so I think I can stay there. Mike Schmidt, Gary Maddox, and Steve Carlton were the trifecta. That's who I imitated in wiffle ball, and it was fun that Gary Maddox came to my wedding, so that was really cool.
Oh, that's all. But you grew up in North Jersey, right?
Yeah, it was North Jersey, and I know Jersey is like 12 different states, as small as it is. But so I theoretically should have been a Yankees or Mets fan, but I kind of shunned it. My brother got me into sports really early, so I picked teams on their cool uniforms, and I saw the powder blue road uniforms for the Phillies. I was like, that's my team. And even
Great.
Dave Cash days, or I have a lot of good memories. But one outfit I loved John Elway, was a big one on the football side. I was a big Alex English fan, Denver Nuggets basketball, just graceful style. So yeah, I loved all sports. So there's a lot of athletes that I admired.
That old 70s Alex English, 80s jersey, the Nuggets, that's one of the great all time. You graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in engineering. What's the hardest class you ever had to take at Penn?
Wow. I think it's when what they do, it's like kind of like baseball. There's a weed out period. They test you, and that's their first year showing up freshman year. and I took a CSE, computer science and engineering class. 240 was the number. Man, that was rough. I mean, it was programming, and I mean, it wasn't my thing. I knew right away. I was like, well, I like computers. I don't think I'm a computer scientist. That class crushed me first
Oh,
year, so that was tough. But I stuck
that's
it out,
cool.
stayed on as an engineer, but not
You
because of
did
that
it,
class.
man.
That
You
class
did
didn't help.
it. Favorite thing about Philadelphia?
Oh wow, I love Philly. I mean, there's the history is something I think I love. I before we moved from Philly, my wife and I met my wife in Philly, so that might be a favorite thing. But we we decided to do a tour before we moved to Chicago, and then moved again a
Hmm.
couple times. And that was cool because you forget when you live somewhere, you forget to, oh, what what are all the history. So took this
Sure.
all day tour. We did Betsy Ross and the Constitution, the center of the visitor center, and absolutely loved it. I had a great time, and so yeah, Philly's a close. My college years, great memories.
Sure. Is your wife from here?
She grew up kind of Garnet Valley, Delaware, Pennsylvania border.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah, yeah.
she moved a couple times. Her dad was the dean of the dental school at Penn, so we had a little Penn
Oh,
connection
very
there. But
cool.
we didn't meet at Penn. It was a complete blind date. So
How does
you
that?
never know.
That's crazy how it works, right? Favorite memory with the Phillies?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I had some great teammates, and I've been texting Scott Rowland today because I'm in Cleveland, and I wanted to remind him of the moment when he wanted to fight everybody in the locker room because of some anonymous quotes in the paper, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you ruined my day today." He's like, so yeah, so I just had a great time with the Phillies. I mean, there's definitely personal memories. I had my 200 hit season.
Hmm.
So that was really cool. I lost my dad in '02, and it was the day I got my 1,000th hit of my career, and it was the last game of the 2002 season. So finished the season and got my 1,000th hit, and then they buried him with that baseball. So that was a tough year, but
Wow.
it was also the way I felt really connected to my dad. So a lot of great memories. I mean, my wedding, all these Phillies executives and teammates came. They went to my dad's funeral. So true family. John Vukovich, David Montgomery, the late, all of them rest in peace. And
Yeah,
so a lot of love for Philly.
that's awesome. All right, I got one more for you here. Let's see what we can come up with. Oh, here you go. Veterans Stadium was blank. Fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Um, well, is it one
You can use
word?
an expletive if you'd
I can use
like.
multiple story, multiple. No, I'd say like. I mean, it's a weird answer, but I'd say like first love, and like, I was a Philly fan from jump. So when I got my driver's license, the first thing I did, the first road trip I went to, was a Phillies Mets game on the road in Veterans Stadium. That's the first thing I did.
Wow.
So I just, I think the thing that was interesting is I played obviously a long time, and I used to get so annoyed at players complaining about stadiums. It drove me crazy because I'm like, do you not remember the minor leagues when I was like, you're showering under like a football stand and you're stepping on glass in center field? Like I had no complaints. I didn't care if it was Shea Stadium, Miller Park, or then like whatever Fulton County was it? No, it wasn't Fulton County. It was the Brewers.
Yeah.
Whatever the Brewers' old stadium. Um, they weren't sexy and brand new like some of the parks today, but they were big league parks where you got to play big league baseball. So the vet was cool. Like that was my childhood. I mean, I used to look at the 600 level. I played with guys like Randy Wolf, and they had the Wolf Pack, and
Yep.
Brandon Duckworth, and the Duck Pond, and Vinny Padilla with the Padilla Flotilla. That was some of the best things in baseball. Like I used to, before the game, I just used to watch literally the Wolf Pack. Like that was the best thing, and I just never got enough of it. Just like the Fanatic. So all that only could happen at Veterans Stadium. So yeah, they blew it up, and I understood, and I love Citizen Bank Park, but I was an old school 70s, 80s child, and those circular round ballparks, cement cathedrals, they just had their
Yeah.
own cool to it.
When you played for the Phillies, I was in high school, so I'm sure you heard me out there yelling at one point from deep in the 700 level.
Yeah.
Some good times. So Doug, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the playoffs. It should be fun.
All right, Pat. Thanks for having me.
He is a native of the Philadelphia area, and he's a Penn State alum as well. He has written for just about every major publication locally and nationally. He's with The Ringer now, hosts a wonderful podcast called Phillies Special. He's also a huge fan of all the local teams. Sheil Kapadia is with us. What's up, Sheil?
I know you make it sound like I switch jobs too often. I think I've gotten that before, but no, it's good to be on here with you. I can't wait for this Phillies playoff series this weekend that I can just enjoy as a fan. Eagles, I'm a reporter and I cover them objectively, but when it comes to the Phillies, I can just sit down like everyone else and root for them.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the things I want to hit you with today. But what I like to do is just to open things up and give you an opportunity to choose what you want to talk about. I created what's called a mood board, and so this is a look at today's mood board. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I got it.
Four different moods here, so it's like a choose your adventure. So do you want to pick one here?
Let's go. The question mark is part of the mood board, yes or no?
That is part of it, yeah. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
moods here.
let's go with the question mark.
All right, the question mark is sort of a mystery eagle, open-ended conversation. So I wrote 3 names down, and you can take this in any direction you want. But basically, when I say a name, you rap with it. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, mystery eagle number 1 would be Lane Johnson. Go any direction you want to go with Lane Johnson.
Probably underappreciated at this point in his career. I think playing at I had him as an all-pro last year. I had to make an all-pro team. He was my starting right tackle. This year, through 4 games, he would be my starting right tackle, all-pro, and just a fun sort of story. He's had ups and downs. I like the guys who there's adversity. Some of it was obviously self-inflicted earlier in his career, but the way he bounced back, the mental health stuff he's talked about, and just like a stud offensive lineman. I mean, I go through the film every week, and I almost never writing down even a single play where Lane Johnson is giving up a pressure, which is incredible. I mean, the film I think first came out in 2011, 2010, somewhere around then. And so I've been doing Eagles games for a long time, and that's just so rare to do that, even just for a single game. Say a guy didn't give up a pressure, and he's been doing it pretty much every game for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I know these stats have been going around this week about how he hasn't allowed a sack since 2020 and hasn't allowed a quarterback hit since midway through last year. And very rarely does he ever even have help on that side. It's not like they're using a tight end to chip on that side. I mean, he swallowed up Trayvon Walker, the number 1 pick in the draft last week. He's done it over and over again. And the longevity and why I wrote his name, obviously, is because he has been so good. But I am glad that basically the first thing you said was underappreciated. He, every single week, just swallows whole the best player normally on the other side. And we just don't really, and it's offensive linemen, so I get it. We don't talk about them as often because we just don't look at them the same way as we would an A.J. Brown or Jalen Hurts. But man, it's just so incredible. Do you think, it's hard to say because you have to rack up the all pros and the Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
Does he have Hall of Fame potential?
Honestly, I was looking at that before this season, and I feel like he sort of hit this peak maybe a little bit later than a typical tackle would. So it does depend on longevity. I mean, he's 30, 31, I want to say. He's around there. So, listen, we saw with Jason Peters where some guys will play late into their careers at a high level. And so I think he would have to string together maybe 3 more years at the level he's playing at this year, 3 to 4 more years, and then that would be more of a conversation. So it's not out of the question. For sure, the other thing I just thought of, I think he's a great teammate. I think that gets underrated about him. When I was on the beat full time, just one of those guys who was always kind of talking up his teammates. If they were going through hard times, he would kind of back them up a little bit. You saw him interacting with guys on offense and defense. He always had the back of his quarterback or the back of the coach. And so great locker room guy as well.
My next mystery Eagle is CJGJ, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the newest Eagle. It's hard to be traded 2 weeks before the season begins and just seamlessly become a part of a defense. I have not seen him do anything but make pretty good plays so far this year. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, and he's playing a new position. He was a slot corner with the Saints, and he's playing safety with the Eagles. Honestly, I would say he's been a little more like up and down. The bad plays that he's had have not been ones that the offense has capitalized. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, but you do see things kind of every week where you're like, ooh, if that were Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, that could have been an ugly one. But it goes to what you said. It's understandable. The guy joined the team, 2 weeks before the season, playing a new position, new scheme, new coaching, new teammates, the communication aspects of it. And so I'm still very bullish on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think he's going to be a fan favorite in time. I think he's going to be a really good player for the Eagles. I think he's someone by the time mid-November, December rolls around, we're saying, okay, now he's really making those splash plays. He's got it. But I do think there's a little bit of that learning curve here where, who knows, the next couple of weeks, if they face a good offense or a good quarterback, we could be saying, oh, he wasn't positioned in the right spot on that, or we're saying, oh, the communication was off on that play. So a key player to keep an eye on for sure.
Is he someone that you think will stick around here long term?
I think that was the plan. Yeah, I think now the Eagles made a real low-risk trade. I mean, they didn't give up anything for him. So if it doesn't work out, they can let him walk. But, man, when you can get guys who are under 26 years old who are really capable of playing at a Pro Bowl level like I think he is, I think those are guys you definitely want to keep around for sure.
Final mystery Eagle, Jonathan Gannon, much maligned after last year and clearly going into the season. And then week 1 happens. They almost blow that lead in Detroit. But since that moment, they have looked like a completely different defense. I don't know if it's something that he has done differently with scheme or whatever it might be, but they don't look like the same defense that we've been accustomed to seeing here for the last couple of years with him in charge. What do you think the deal is with Jonathan Gannon?
Yeah, I was definitely maligning him. There's no doubt about it. I didn't like how they played defense last year, and you are right. They've played great the last 3 weeks. I don't want to come across as a hater. I'm a little more in wait and see mode. Let's see it through the next couple months. Let's see some good defenses. Honestly, Howie Roseman probably deserves just as much credit. I mean, they've got a lot of talent all over the place on this defense that you would expect it to perform as a top 10 unit. But again, I don't want to come across as a hater. He's done a good job. The defense is playing well. He is doing different things. They're more aggressive this year for sure. So, yeah, absolutely. He deserves credit. Absolutely.
I think what's going to help him, too, is that they just don't play very many teams right now that look all that great offensively, right. And that's gonna pad those stats.
And it might not change that much. Honestly, you look at their schedule, it's not a great schedule. I mean, they get Carson Wentz again. They get the Giants twice. Yep. They get the Pittsburgh Steelers. They get some teams that you're going to be able to pad those stats quite a bit. So I guess, a couple weeks from now, we'll see if Dak Prescott's back. That's going to be a big game against the Cowboys. They'll get the Packers on the schedule. So there will be little glimpses here and there where we'll get a sense of, all right, can this defense hold up against sort of the playoff caliber offenses?
All right, that's it for your mystery Eagles. We got to move on. How about you want to choose another? Choose your adventure.
Yeah, let's go with that's Nick Sirianni over there, right?
Yeah, Nick Sirianni. I tried to print in color, and that's what ends up happening. Turned green, so it actually worked. Yeah. It worked. Yeah, it's Nick Sirianni, but it's more about the T-shirts. What's your favorite Nick Sirianni T-shirt that he's worn so far?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Do you have 3 or 4 I can choose from? I haven't studied this closely. I know he does the turnovers now.
The turnover shirt was the one that he was wearing in that shirt right there. He's had the Brandon Graham. He had the Jake Elliott shirt. A Kenny Gainwell shirt made its way in there, I think. He's had so many. But I guess that just speaks more to he's trying to connect with these players in a certain way. And it actually seems to be working.
I do like that. Yeah, and I think it's genuine too. If you're a fraud who's just kind of doing that for show, then everyone can see past that. But it's one of the pillars of his coaching philosophy. Coaching has changed, the last 10, 15 years in the NFL. That's kind of the route you have to go. I mean, if you're going to go somewhere and think you're Bill Belichick or think you're Bill Parcells or something now, you better be a freaking awesome coach, and your team better be winning a lot of games for that to fly. And so I just like approaching it the way he approaches it, that connection with players. It makes it easier to have tough conversations when they're not playing well. It makes it easier to have conversations about stuff that's going on off the field. And so, yeah, I liked it. Again, this is one of those things that when the team's losing, we'd probably be calling him Nicky T-shirts, doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks this is so cool, and they're 1-3, and the team's winning, and he's doing a great job. And so it is a cool thing to do. But I think the Brandon Graham one was like a cool green color, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know if that's right.
Color,
so yeah, I think that was a good one, and everybody loves BG. He's been around forever, so that's a good one to have.
But you made a good point, because I did a story with the head coach of the Philadelphia Union, Jim Curtin. He invited me over to look at his sneaker collection. He's got a contract with Nike now, and he gets a new pair of Air Maxes or Jordans or whatever it might be before every single game. And he said that, he's always been a sneaker guy, but this now gives him inroads to be able to connect with a lot of these younger players. He's coaching guys that are 17, 18, 19 years old, and that is cool for them. And so you're right that, maybe if they were losing, this wouldn't feel the same with Nick Sirianni, but it all just does seem to be working right now. And it is, as someone, and you've covered the team for a long time now, it doesn't come off to the players that I can tell as corny. It's maybe a little hokey, but to them, they seem to vibe with this guy. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I think players can tell. Players are around the coach more than we are as media, and I do think it's resonated with them.
All right, let's move on. You have two more choices now. You've got the champagne, and you've got the Jalen Hurts here in a beautiful
like these
blue
props.
suit, by the way.
I'm gonna have to start incorporating something like this into my podcast. You're giving me good ideas. We'll save the champagne for last. We don't want to have a couple glasses before we have to answer the serious question. So let's go with Jalen Hurts.
You don't want to pop the cork too soon. Jalen Hurts, is he a legitimate MVP candidate? Can he win it this year?
Yeah, he can. I mean, if you look at the gambling odds right now, I don't know if he's the favorite, but he's among the 2 or 3 favorites for sure. He's improved. Adding A.J. Brown, it just can't be overstated what a difference that guy has made. He solved so many problems for them. It's 3rd and 5. What do we call? Oh, look, A.J. Brown's one-on-one against that corner. Why don't you just run a slant and then just throw the guy to the ground or battle for an extra 6 yards and get a first down, and the crowd gets fired up. Oh, you're in the red zone. It's 3rd down and goal from the 7. What do we call? Oh, look, we have that receiver over there. He's opened up the middle of the field. And so I think Jalen Hurts has done a great job just incorporating the pieces around him, not trying to do too much, using his legs, making good decisions. He's really made a fantastic leap. That week 2 game against the Vikings, that was the eye-opener to me, where I went, I didn't know that this version of Jalen Hurts really existed. I didn't know he had this ceiling. And so you're not going to get that guy every week, but just to know that he can play at that level in a big spot is a big deal. So yeah, the numbers right now are pretty crazy. I think he's completing 67% of his passes and averaging 9 yards per attempt. I mean, those are wild numbers, and that doesn't even take into account what he's doing as a runner. So yeah, I think the numbers are going to be pretty good by the end of the season.
And I was someone that thought, you can't teach arm strength in the NFL, and that would come back to hurt him. And look, it might. We're only 4 games into the year. Something like that might. But he looks completely different as a passer. Forget the legs, just the ability to read. And I know he's not always going through progressions across the entirety of the field, because why would he, right? I think Nick Sirianni talked about this earlier in the year. It's like, how many progressions should we give the guy if he's so talented with his legs? But you can just tell the passing game is night and day, and A.J. Brown certainly has something to do with that. But I also think that he is just so much more crisp with his reads, and his decision-making has been fantastic. And, you can't deny it. I mean, they're 4-0. He's got 8 total touchdowns and only 2 turnovers. So the numbers speak for themselves. I think that in this day and age, obviously, we got a chance to see Carson Wentz up close just a couple of weeks ago, and what a mess he is. But the ability to escape the pocket and make positive plays with your legs will always be able to save Jalen Hurts, and that is something that you just really can't teach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he does as a scrambler, it limits some of the coverages that defenses can play. When they're playing man coverage and their backs are to the line of scrimmage, well, now he can just take off if no one has eyes on him. And so they've always got to be aware of that with their game plans. And even last week, you could point to a handful of plays where you're drawing it up on the chalkboard and you would say, oh, you could have got to this next read and passed the ball, but it's rainy conditions. I mean, we saw with Trevor Lawrence, he couldn't handle the rain at all. And so it's bad conditions. You're able to pick up those yards with your legs. It doesn't always need to be the decision that you would make on the chalkboard. And credit to Nick Sirianni, by the way, for understanding that and kind of coaching to that, not being so rigid and saying, oh, why didn't you go through X, Y, and Z?
Do you think he'll win the MVP? I mean, I know that he's pretty close to the odds-on favorite, but do you think he wins it?
He has as good a chance as anybody. I mean, if you said, "Hey, Sheil, you're the mortgage is on the line" or something, I might pick Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. But it would be a hard decision. I would definitely have to think about it. He's right there, I think, in what he's going to do this year. MVP usually just comes down to numbers and team success. And man, they're positioned right now to win a lot of games, and he's going to be a major reason why.
Before we get to the last one on the mood board, Eagles Cardinals on Sunday. This is not, and I wouldn't call it a trap game, but it's not an easy game. Kyler Murray's still a really good quarterback, but the Cardinals they've lost 7 straight at home. The Eagles are clearly the better team right now. How do you think this shakes out?
Yeah, I've been referring to it as an any given Sunday game where, we've all watched football for a long time and we think we have a team pegged and a game pegged, and then we sit down for 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon and the way it plays out is totally different than we thought it was going to play out. And there are reasons for that. It could be special teams miscues. It could be a fluky turnover where the ball gets batted at the line of scrimmage. It could be Kyler Murray. He thrives in chaos when it's a 2-minute drill or something where he doesn't have to take the play call and it's just like backyard football. That's where he thrives. So those are the things I've got my eye on in this game. But on paper, there's no reason to pick the Cardinals. The Eagles are a more talented team. They're coached so much better. They execute so much better on both sides of the ball. The Cardinals have been outscored by 50 points in the first halves of these games so far this season. Worst mark in the NFL. And so I'm picking the Eagles handily. I think I've got 34-21 Eagles, with that caveat that, listen, wild things happen in the NFL. That's why we watch. But my thing is, if you played this game out 100 times, I think the most common outcome would be the Eagles winning by double digits. So I'm just going to go with that here.
I will say, and tell me if you agree or disagree, that a game coming off a game like last week that is so physically demanding because of the rain and the wind, sometimes teams can trip up that next week. And it's not like they've got back-to-back home games. You got to fly across the country. That's always can be a bit of an issue for teams after such a victory. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's no doubt. All that stuff is real. The playing in last week's conditions, all right, this is the week where maybe nationally you're getting talked about more. You're the only undefeated team in the NFL. No one thinks the Cardinals are going to win. They're home underdogs. All those things that we talk about, I think, are real things, and just in terms of your focus, your preparation during the week. If it's a monster game, you don't have to worry about that. If it's one of these games, and you got the Cowboys the following week, by the way, on Sunday night. So if there's any of that look-ahead stuff, that could be a factor as well.
All right, last one on the mood board for Sheil Kapadia is we're going to pop the champagne. And so I'm glad that you wore the Phillies hat, obviously, because that's what it kind of has to do with. It's a two-parter. It's Phillies-Eagles. So we've seen the Phillies pop the champagne as they got the third wild card spot, which we will take here for sure.
Yes.
Is it worthy of popping beers and champagne? For another day, we can shelve that. But I'm sure you're a big Phillies fan, that you're excited about this upcoming 3-game series here with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, I just the Phillies were my first favorite team. That '93 team was kind of when I was I'd fallen in love with sports before then, but that was the first time the team I watched was having that kind of success and in the playoffs, and you're feeling the heartbreak, and you're learning to kind of that term sports hate, where it's like, oh my God, they can't get Paul Molitor out here. What is going on? I hate this guy, and I'm 10 years old just cursing him and all that stuff. And so, Dan McQuaid, who I just had on the Philly special pod, he brought this up. That was the only good Phillies team of our childhood. I mean, I was 10 years old. That was the only team that made the playoffs. And then I'm thinking back to those runs, 2007 to 2011. I mean, we could live to be 100, and we might not ever see a run like that again from a Philadelphia sports team, let alone a Phillies team. And so I'm just excited to sit down at 2:07 p.m. on Friday afternoon and feel that intensity of, all right, guys are either going to make their legacies in the next 48 to 72 hours, or on Monday morning, we're going to be going, oh my God, Bryce Harper, I can't believe he struck out in that key spot. You know how much money we're paying him? And so baseball's funny like that, where it's this small window. You don't get a lot of opportunities. It's not basketball where you're going up and down the court with a bunch of touches. You get a handful of chances maybe in a game. And we're going to remember people, for better or worse, in Philadelphia sports folklore for years to come, based on what happens in those 2 to 3 games. So yeah, I've been kind of getting the excitement today. I was even reading stuff this morning and getting into that fan mode. Oh, no one's picking the Phillies. No one thinks they have a chance. That mentality too. So yeah, I'm into it. I can't wait.
That's so funny you brought up Paul Molitor. I went down like a Paul Molitor rabbit hole on Baseball Reference the other day. I don't know why.
So good.
I have no idea. But okay, so Phillies pop the champagne. They're in the playoffs. Eagles question: will we pop the champagne at the end of the year with this team?
Oh man, I think they got a great chance to get to the Super Bowl, and once you get there, it's one game. So again, if I were betting the entire mortgage on a team to win it right now, it probably wouldn't quite be them. But man, in the NFC, it's set up for them. The schedule's easy. They're healthy right now. They're deep. They're playing well. You're seeing the guys make a leap. You want to see make the leap. So if you ask me, are they going to be the 1 seed in the NFC? Yeah, I would probably. I'll probably put I don't know if I put the mortgage. All right, but
I'm going to tell your wife, man. She's not going to be happy about this.
I'm confident saying that, and then you get the bye, and the rest of the NFC doesn't look that good. So yeah, they've got a great chance to get there and make this a really special season.
Sheil, you're the best. Check him out at The Ringer, Sheil Kapadia. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.